Good day, everybody, and welcome to this Engaged Employee webinar together with our partners at Investors in People. And today we're going to be sort of looking behind the frankly quite disturbing stat that 3 in 4 people are stressed at work. And what we're going to be doing is looking at what we can do about that. My name is Steve Hurst. I'm the Editorial Director at Engaged Employee, and I'm delighted to be joined today by Danielle Bacon, Director of People at Investors in People. Good day to you, Danielle. How are you today?
I'm very well, thank you, Steve.
Not feeling too stressed, I hope.
No, not
the webinar.
No.
Great stuff. Well, yes, that's right. According to the recent research, 3 in 4 people do feel stressed at work. So, what are you doing in your organisation to embed a culture of well-being, and what advice can you take to do that? And that's one of the reasons why it's great to have Danielle on board for the webinar today, because Danielle is going to be looking at all of the issues around stress and some of the solutions as well. So I'm delighted to have her on board today to make the main presentation. Before I do hand over to Danielle, though, I would really like to encourage our delegates today and welcome to you all to ask questions. There's an Ask a Question button panel on your screen, and do please keep those questions coming in, because none of those questions would be wasted in any way. Any questions we don't get the chance to answer during the 45 minutes of this webinar will be answered afterwards. So none of your questions will go to waste, and we're really looking forward to receiving them. So I'm going to stop waffling on now. Without further ado, I'm going to hand over to you, Danielle, and I'm really looking forward to your presentation today. Over to you.
Okay, lovely. Thanks, Steve. So as Steve said, I'm Danielle, and I've been fortunate to be Director of People at Investors in People for the last 5 years. So we're all about making work better, about improving people's lives at work. But we recently carried out some research, and as Steve said, it told us that 3 out of 4 people are stressed at work. So given that most of us will spend over 80,000 hours at work, and over 3 billion people are in work across the world, that's a lot of hours to feel unhappy. So today I want to spend some time talking about the work we've done with our team at Investors in People to put wellbeing of our people at the heart of what we do and how we do things, and also explain how that's evolved over the last few years. If numbers are your thing, then I've got some great stats to share about why wellbeing in the workplace matters and why it's important to have a culture of wellbeing. And we'll explore a bit about how you can go about developing the right wellbeing strategy for your people. If you want some practical wellbeing ideas that you can adopt in your own organisations, then we've got some of those too. So most people have heard of Investors in People. You probably have seen our logo and our plaques in all sorts of places. We've been around for 29 years now, and since then we've worked to make work better for over 11 million people. And we do that through our frameworks. Frameworks are our business, it's what we're all about, and we've been developing and perfecting those since the 90s. We've got a number of them that help you work out how to lead, manage and support your people well. We've got our We Invest in People framework and product. We've got a new We Invest in Wellbeing product, which I'll talk a little bit about later on. And coming soon, we've got a We Invest in Apprentices product. So although we've been around for nearly 30 years, 3 years ago we went through a huge organisational change and became a community interest company. That means we're an independent social enterprise, and every penny we make is now invested back into our community to make work even better. But the core of what we do and why we do it remains the same. So we've spent the last 3 years engaging and listening to our community, and we've got a kind of brand new brand, refreshed brand, new products and new mission. We're focused on our purpose, which is about making work better. So we're all about improving people's lives at work, and we believe that if you feel supported at work, you work better. And if you work better, you'll feel happier and healthier. And that's good for individuals and good for business and good for society as a whole. So just a quick thing about our name. So our name's often been shortened to IOP, but as part of our refreshed purpose and brand, we're putting the people back into our name. So from now on, you'll only see it here as referring to ourselves as Investors in People, because that's what we're all about. So a little bit about my background and my wellbeing journey, both personally and organisationally. So society's changed hugely since I started my career in the water industry in the mid-90s. Social awareness of mental health and wellbeing has increased dramatically. My first workplace was in the water industry. There was a massive focus on health and safety in a physical sense, largely because a lot of what we did could be quite dangerous, chemicals, confined spaces, but there was almost no mention of mental health or well-being. But things have changed, and the organisation I worked for then is now leading the way in its sector on well-being. They're even used as a case study in the most recent Deloitte report on the business case for investing in well-being, and they've won numerous awards for their well-being work. After the water industry, I spent some time in the call centre as a manager, which was a tough working environment for everyone, especially the people handling the calls. There was constant monitoring, pressure to answer calls, deal with them quickly, timed toilet breaks, loud and noisy environment and handling calls with vulnerable customers, people struggling to pay their bills, and people yelling at staff on a regular basis over the phone. But again, beyond display screen equipment assessments, there was little thought given to staff wellbeing, either physical or mental. And I think that role as a manager in a call centre was the first time I became aware of work impacting on my own mental health. So I was managing a team for the first time with no training and no real support on what to do and how to manage in pretty challenging situations.
That's been a very stressful time for you, Danielle.
It was stressful. So I then spent a chunk of time in the public sector, and again, very little mention of mental health in play. So 2011 for me was a really pivotal year. I'd been under huge amounts of pressure at work. I had a 2-year-old who still hadn't mastered the art of sleeping. And I was then struck down with something called Guillain-Barré syndrome. So it's a neurological disorder where the immune system attacks the nerves, but nobody's entirely sure what causes it. Doctors still debate it, but there's a huge amount of anecdotal evidence that stress plays a huge part in that. I was lucky. Some people end up paralysed. Occasionally people die, but I got away with 4 months off work and then kind of several years of recovery to get back to full health and strength. So that was my own personal wake-up call around kind of well-being and mental health, and made me realise I wasn't invincible and I needed to start looking after my own well-being. So I've done a lot myself, so I'm a big fan of mindfulness. It's about listening to my own body and knowing when I need to rest and not just pushing on relentlessly, and making sure I've got a network of people around me who I can turn to for support. In a workplace context, I think joining Invested in People in 2014 was where I started to think about work, kind of the well-being in a wider workplace context, and started hearing more about well-being and mental health. There was much more awareness in the press, and for the first time ever I was working in an environment where it was okay to talk about mental health and well-being. We didn't have a formal strategy in place, but there was just a general openness and willingness to talk about mental health and well-being. So we started small in terms of our well-being work. We had lots going on and we were just a small team, but the first thing we did for Mental Health Awareness Week in 2014 was just mention the event in our team newsletter and gave some stats about the number of people affected by mental health. What I hadn't appreciated or anticipated is the impact that something that small would have. So at my next one-to-one with a team member, he said how pleased he was to see mental health mentioned in our newsletter. And then he disclosed he was had a diagnosis of depression. And that's just seeing us mention Mental Health Awareness Week had made him feel accepted and acknowledged and much more comfortable about sharing. So once we knew that, we could work with him to make sure he felt supported. It didn't cost the business anything, but it had a massive impact on that individual and their own well-being.
Absolutely, yeah.
So it was a curveball in 2015, really, that really cemented our focus on well-being as an organisation. So in November 2015, Investors in People was operating as a standalone business unit inside a public sector organisation called the UK Commission for Employment and Skills. And George Osborne, Chancellor at the time, decided to close UKCF. And the future for Investors in People and the team was really uncertain. Redundancy was a very real risk, as was the organisation being sold into the private sector. So as you can imagine, our people were feeling very unsettled and concerned about their futures. But we also had very little clarity on what would happen, and that uncertainty would end up lasting for well over a year. So it might seem a strange time to some to choose that point to start developing a wellbeing strategy when realistically in a few months' time everyone could have left or the organisation might not have existed. But we felt it was the perfect time. We knew we had a fantastic team of people. They were dedicated to what we do and we wanted to keep them. We also wanted to make sure they felt supported as we went through that really turbulent time. So what did we do? We took a top-down approach. We got buy-in and commitment for chief exec and senior managers, but we also took a bottom-up approach too and involved everyone in developing our wellbeing plans. We didn't have a budget. We were inside public sector with huge budget kind of spending constraints, but we had an enthusiastic team of health and wellbeing champions. So we kicked off a programme of raising awareness, opening up conversations about mental health, and signposting people to resources and tools to help. And then kind of nearly 18 months later, in February 2017, we finally had an answer on our future and we became the community interest company that we are today. So a social enterprise, not-for-profit, purpose-driven organisation. And the extra good news for us is that we managed to keep everyone with us during that time. So in spite of the uncertainty, people stuck with us, the team stuck with us, and we believe our focus on wellbeing had a lot to do with that. So I promised you some stats, and here comes the first ones. So we carried out some research recently and asked how many people are looking for a better work-life balance. And we found that 2 in 3 people are looking for a better work-life balance. We then asked how many people said they would choose a nicer workplace over a 3% pay rise. The answer to that was half. 1 in 2 people would sacrifice more pay for a nicer workplace. And then we asked people, how many of you think your workplace supports mental well-being? And the answer to that was just a third. 1 in 3 people say their workplace supports mental well-being. So what's getting in the way? What's stopping employers from effectively supporting well-being in the workplace? Why do people feel they're not being supported? We hear a variety of reasons when we talk to organisations and the investors in people community and wider, and some of those are on the screen. You know, they maybe don't feel they have a problem with well-being, they don't see the value, they don't think their employees will be interested, they don't know where to start. So first up, we'll look at why bother, what's the value, why should we be interested in this? So on a human level, there are plenty of reasons to invest in the well-being of your people because bad workplaces cost lives. Over 500,000 people are suffering from work-related stress, anxiety or depression. 3 in 4 people feel stressed at work. 3 in 5 people are losing sleep because of work. And 2 in 3 people can't switch off from work. So in our recent job exodus research, we found that far from getting better, well-being in the workplace is getting worse. So you think that these stats might be dropping because well-being is a much bigger topic, but 1 in 10 are less happy than they were a year ago, and 1 in 4 were unhappy in 2018, and we still see that now. I think there's also the flip side of that is people changing too. So I think people, the expectations of people are changing. They expect more from their workplaces than just a job and money. They expect a work-life balance, friendly workplaces, support, and those don't feel like unreasonable things to expect.
Were you shocked at all by those stats?
We were, yeah, we were shocked by that. But there's lots we can do about it. So
yes, yeah.
It's a good thing. But I think if the human cost doesn't sell it to you, then I think it's also worth saying there's a solid business case for investing in wellbeing too. So there's 17.5 million working days are lost in the UK due to mental health related reasons. There's a recent report by Deloitte that estimates that mental health costs UK business about £45 billion a year. That's made up of £6.8 billion related to sickness absence. So between 27 and 29 billion pounds from presenteeism. So when people are at work because they feel they should be, but they aren't really well enough to be there and they're not being productive. And then 8.6 billion from staff turnover. So people leaving organisations because they're not being supported and they don't feel they're working in healthy environments. Just
picking up on the presenteeism element of that, Danielle, that seems to be something that's getting worse.
Yes. Yeah, I think it is. And the other phrase is leaveism as well, where people don't feel they can switch off when they're going on leave or they're taking leave to catch up on work.
Yes, yeah.
So that seems to be an increasing problem as well. So, and those costs don't take into account the kind of indirect costs of those things, so that, the impact on other staff, loss of creativity and innovation. So there's also strong evidence that investing in wellbeing brings a real financial return for employers as well. So again, in this Deloitte report, they showed that for every £1 spent on wellbeing in the workplace, employers get a £5 return. And that return can be as high as £10 when the investment is in preventative wellbeing measures.
That's hugely important, isn't it? I mean, that's the kind of thing that chief executive's board should be really taking notice.
Absolutely. Investing in wellbeing is not a soft and fluffy thing to do.
No.
There's solid business case and business reasons why you would do it, as well as the human side of things.
Absolutely. Understood.
So now we've addressed the cost and value, then let's have a look at how you go about working out what to do and what's going to make the biggest impact on your organisation, on your people and the health of your organisation. So it sounds obvious, but there's no one size fits all when it comes to designing a wellbeing strategy. Every organisation will have its own unique set of circumstances, its own set of challenges, and equally no two people are the same. So what's helpful and engaging for one person won't work for the person sat next to them. So whatever you develop is important. There's flexibility and some sort of ability to tailor solutions in the support you offer. But what we do know is that preventative measures are more effective, impact and cost-wise. And we also know a structured approach to designing, implementing and evaluating your wellbeing strategy will hugely improve the chances of success. And we also know that an integrated approach that looks at wellbeing in all its facets, so physical, social and psychological, is where it's going to be most impactful. It's also not a quick fix. So there's not you can't just do one thing
No.
and hope that's going to solve
It's a complex issue, isn't it? Yeah. Yeah.
It's complex, yeah. So your wellbeing strategy is something that's going to need to evolve and change over time, along with your own organisation and your people. So our own approach to wellbeing invested in people teams evolved over time and continues to do so. So in the early days, our approach was very much around awareness raising. So we talked to our team, we found out what mattered to them from a wellbeing perspective, and overwhelmingly at that time it was all about the psychological side of wellbeing, probably because the challenging time we were going through. We set up a group of wellbeing champions to help us raise awareness, and we made a really visible and public statement about our commitment to opening up conversations about mental health by signing the Time to Change Employers Pledge. And we put in place some free tools and resources for the team to access. And we started the process of training and supporting our managers to have effective conversations about mental health. So where should you start? So whilst a holistic integrated wellbeing strategy is likely to be the most effective, you don't need to start there. I think it's important to recognise that small steps are great and can be as impactful as, broader things. And we saw our own early newsletter content, and I think it's better to do something small than do nothing at all. So the model on the screen you've got there is something you can use, and it works for a whole organisation. It might work for, it works for just a wellbeing initiative at a team level. It could work for a whole strategy or just a single kind of action that you want to take. You can start small and go around the loop multiple times as you build up and expand the work you're doing, and you build your own confidence and knowledge and expertise in wellbeing. But the starting point for all of it is knowing your why. It's about working out what you're trying to achieve from your wellbeing strategy, how it's going to help your organisation, your people. And that might be about improving productivity, it might be about reducing absence, it might be about attracting and retaining talent, given what we said about the rising expectations and what employers will offer and the fight for talent. Having a really solid wellbeing strategy can be quite an attractive talent attraction and retention tool. So if you've got your why clear and you know why you're doing it, then you'll probably find it easy to move on to the next step, which is about finding a senior champion in your business. It's not to say you can't make wellbeing initiatives work without a senior champion, but it's better if you've got somebody more senior to help you champion in that. That might be one of your senior management team, it might be a chief exec, it might be somebody on your board. So once you've got your champion identified, it's then about identifying your priorities and what's going to make the biggest difference to your people and your organisation. And this is where talking to your people is absolutely key. We would advocate that you talk to your people at every stage of this process, but definitely identifying your priorities. There's no point coming up with priorities that aren't going to make a difference to the people that are working for you.
You have to bring the people with you, don't you?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we've been really lucky. We find people are hugely engaged in this topic and just pleased to have the opportunity to work on it. So, yeah. After that, it's about working out what budget and resources you've got. It might be zero, like we were in the early days, but at least you know, and you can plan accordingly. And even if you don't have a budget, it doesn't mean you can't do anything. I've got some ideas coming up later on about kind of free things that you can do, or very low cost things. So that doesn't have to be the thing that stops you going ahead. Then it's about developing your plan and finding tools and resources to help you implement some of those things. Again, we'll come to that later, but there's lots of free stuff out there. And it's worth looking at about what you've already got in the organisation. So lots of organisations have employee assistance programs, but they are woefully underutilised. So there's lots of things you can do around promoting what those programs offer to your employees and get lots out of that. Then it's about launching the comms, and it can take repeating to get things to land and people to hear what you're saying. So use as many channels as you possibly can. Then it's about implementing, and that's where we use our health and wellbeing champions actively. So we use those to help keep the momentum going after we've done the initial launch of a new initiative. And then the final part on that cycle is about evaluating and refining. So think about how you're going to measure the impact of what you do. And the more thought you give to measuring impact, then you're building your evidence case to support more future investment and activities. So those impacts, you could measure things like formal metrics around sickness, staff turnover. You might want to use your employee survey, but it could be more informal things like just keeping a track of the number of people participating in the events or the activities that you put on. and using your health and wellbeing champions really to gather feedback and be your eyes and ears about what's working and what isn't. We've structured our most recent wellbeing strategy around the 3 pillars in our own new Investors in People We Invest in Wellbeing product, and that looks at wellbeing from a psychological perspective, from a physical perspective, and from a social perspective. So on the social side of things, we look at, are people feeling recognised and rewarded for the work they do? Do they feel they've got a voice in the organisation? Is the organisation inclusive and supportive of diversity? What community activities are going on, and how family friendly are your policies? So are people's work relationships supported? Is there a culture of teamwork, trust and respect? Also, the physical side of things refers to anything and everything that affects our physical health, really. So that might be physical activity, it might be nutrition, musculoskeletal and environmental factors. Are people aware of, the support that you've got in place for nutrition and physical activity? And then psychological wellbeing refers to mental health, to rest, to sleep, and financial wellbeing too. And it starts with understanding how our people are doing, asking how they're feeling, making sure they know where to go for help if they have mental health concerns, and then looking for ways to improve their health.
And do those 3 things intertwine with each other?
Absolutely, yeah. You can't separate. Yeah, very, very, very much so.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I think there's strong evidence around the importance of physical activity on mental health, and the importance of great social networks on mental health. So.
Of course. Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. Definitely. So as I said, our wellbeing strategy has evolved over the last 5 years. What underpins it still, what hasn't changed is, listening to our people and having an active group of wellbeing champions. But what we've got in place now is a more formal 3-year strategy that's linked to our We Invest in Wellbeing product. We're much stronger on kind of the metrics and evaluation side of things, and we have regular surveys and check-ins to see how things are going. We've made wellbeing a key part of what we call our check-in process. So we replaced our annual appraisal process about 18 months ago, and replaced it with a more continuous performance discussion approach. And wellbeing is now a part of each of those conversations that managers are having with teams. We've been training mental health first aiders, but also making sure we put support in place for those people, so they can be having some quite challenging conversations with people when they're supporting them. So it's just about making sure our mental health first aiders feel supported too. And we've also added wellbeing to our induction process. So now one of our health and wellbeing champions meets each of our new starters to give them an overview of our approach to wellbeing in the organisation, and that shows our commitment to wellbeing and allows our new starters to open up about their own health and mental health and wellbeing needs and get support from day one.
Has that had much of an impact?
It has, yes. Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. We've there's a couple of cases where we've had people who've had that induction, and as a result of that have opened up and said, actually, I've got a diagnosis of anxiety, or I need support with this. So it makes a massive difference that we can support people from day one rather than trying to support them.
That's interesting. Yeah.
Escalated. So we're also just in the process of reviewing and updating all our HR policies and framing them through a wellbeing lens, even the scary ones around disciplinary hearings and performance management. We're just making sure that all of our policies have got a wellbeing angle, so that we're supporting the wellbeing of everybody involved in those situations. We've got directors who are now championing different areas of the wellbeing agenda and acting as role models. And we recently signed something called the Inside Out Charter. So we've been lucky we've had chief exec and senior management support all along, but we're now broadening that out to our non-exec board. So we've made a commitment to have wellbeing on our board agenda. We've got a board level sponsor, and we're going to report on wellbeing of our team in our annual report. And we're also doing some work around financial wellbeing. The correlation is strong both ways. So mental health conditions can make it harder to manage finances, but equally financial worries can impact on mental health hugely. And there's a stat that people who are worried about their finances lose on average 6 days of productive time at work each year. So
that's a lot, yeah.
And just this week we've been looking at our response to the coronavirus situation. So we're looking at working home opportunities for staff. We're lucky we can do that. Also making sure we're putting support and guidance in place to help people make that adjustment if they need to. So if people aren't used to working from home, then it can be quite a different way of working, and we're just making sure that people know how to look after their own well-being in those situations.
Because the government have introduced emergency legislation, haven't they, so that your first day off
Yes.
off work now, you get sick pay.
Yes.
Because of coronavirus.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So I share now some top tips really. So if you're doing your wellbeing strategy, I think the first one is keep it small. Start small and keep it simple. As I said earlier, you don't need to overcomplicate it, and raising awareness, encouraging conversations and openness and listening are a great start. And use a bit of trial and error, see what works for your organisation, but make sure you gather the data so you can evaluate that properly. Talked about it a lot, as you'd expect from investing in people. It's about being guided by your people. Find out what your people think's needed and get them to help you to prioritise. We've used focus groups, surveys, informal feedback. We look at what's being discussed on things like Slack or Teams. And we also make it a group effort. You know, our wellbeing champions all do a little bit each so that it's not taking up too much of their time. And they do things that relate to their own interests. So we've got some people who are really up for the physical activity side of things, other people more interested in organising social events, and others who are more interested in the mental health and psychological side of things. Yeah. We've also made it clear to our wellbeing champions that it's okay to step back if they've got too much on, and they need to look after their own wellbeing. So we don't want, you know, being a wellbeing champion to be something
to be stressful.
Stressful.
Exactly.
The other thing we've done is use our networks. So we share an office with another organisation, and we've teamed up, the two of us, and run kind of shared awareness raising events, and the respective teams have taken it in turn to lead a lunchtime walk once a fortnight. So again, you're spreading the load and not putting too much pressure on any one individual. And I think the other thing to say is get onto LinkedIn. There's so many great people on LinkedIn talking about wellbeing and mental health, and they're all really passionate about what they do, and they're so willing to share their ideas and their approaches and their stories. We've had some great conversations and advice from some amazing people, so definitely use that as a forum. I think, the other thing on that slide is around supporting your managers. So it's great saying let's open up the conversation about mental health. But if you're encouraging disclosure and openness about mental health, then you need your managers to feel confident in handling those discussions. Otherwise, you add another layer of pressure to those. So, it's about making sure they know they're not expected to be counsellors or experts, but they know how to signpost people to sources of help.
Yes.
Giving them guidance on how to manage staff with ongoing health situations or support them when people are coming back to work. We're big fans of something called wellness action plans. So it's a simple template. There's copies online. You can just get individuals to work through and just articulate what it is that keeps them well at work. And if they're happy sharing that with their manager, then their manager's got some really good hints and tips about how to support their staff. We also have a regular people manager forum every 6 weeks where we get our managers together, and that's just a space to offer peer-to-peer support and a space to share what they've, if they've got situations, obviously not sharing confidential information, but they can talk, hypothetically about situations and support each other. Okay. So start with what already exists and what's free. We have another not-for-profit that comes in and delivers a free meditation session for us once a month. We don't have huge budgets for wellbeing activities, so we have to keep costs down. We've had picnics in our local park, and there's a picture on the screen of some mugs with chocolate in. It was a mugging day. So we had an activity in the office where people filled a mug with treats, chocolates, healthy snacks, and put the mug and the note on a colleague's desk saying what they appreciated about that colleague and why they liked working with them, and that created a really nice kind of buzz and atmosphere in the office. So,
excellent. Yeah, I think we'll try that. Engage.
Yeah. No, it was really good.
Yeah.
So, one of the things that had the most impact was early on was signing that in Time to Change Employers pledge. It was a signal to the team about senior leadership buy-in, but we also got everybody to sign individual pledges after we'd signed the organisational pledge, and that was them saying one thing they would do to look after their own well-being or the well-being of a colleague. So there was a whole variety of things. So it might be about, walking to work more, speaking up if they see a colleague who's not looking at themselves, eating a healthier breakfast, making sure they're home in time for bath time with their newborn. So that was just people making kind of their own pledges. And we did that for not long after we became a social enterprise. So that was a really intense period for us. There were high workloads, people working really longer and longer hours. And actually in an organisation like ours where people are really passionate about what we do and why we do it, it can be hard to get people to slow down and not put quite so much effort and not give quite so much of themselves. But as a result of people making these pledges, we saw a real shift in kind of work-life balance, and people starting to encourage each other to go home and say, oh, you've been here, you've worked late this week already, why don't you go home? So they were really, really important for us.
I like the pledges, yeah.
We also make good use of awareness days, so there's a whole calendar of wellbeing related events that happen throughout the year. There's just some of them on that slide that we've done, and it can be quite good to build a plan around those key dates. It helps give you some structure, and there's loads of resources that those organisations and charities will give you to draw on. So for National Fitness Day, we had one of our team members did a fitness boot camp in the local park for people to join in with. And along similar lines, there's lots of resources online you can access from a whole variety of organisations to help build your kind of pool of resources. We also use our internal channels, so we use Slack, but other organisations will use Microsoft Teams and things like that. And we have a dedicated wellbeing Slack channel for people to share hints and tips about wellbeing, articles they've seen, things that make them happy. We get lots of photos of pets shared on that channel, hamsters, cats, dogs, and that seems to cheer people up.
So that's used a lot. That gets a lot of use, that channel then, yeah?
It does, absolutely, and it's good because we have a mix of office London-based staff and remote workers, and that's a way that you don't have to be in the office to join in the conversations about wellbeing that way. And equally, know that even if you are in the office, not everybody wants to be involved in face-to-face activities. So again, it's that thing about finding a different variety of just kind of different balance of channels and routes that appeal to different people.
Yeah, covering all the bases, basically, what people want. Yeah.
Basically, yeah. So that's kind of most of what I was going to talk about. So just as a final reminder, we firmly believe that investing in wellbeing makes work better. If people aren't stressed, if they aren't losing sleep, if they enjoy where they work and what they do, they're more productive. And if people are leading happier, healthier lives, then that's good for individuals, it's good for business, and it's good for society as a whole. And hopefully we'll see some of those negative stats come down. Hopefully it will be a lot less than 17.5 million working days lost to mental health reasons. The cost of it will be less than 45 billion, and hopefully we can change that 3 out of 4 people.
Absolutely.
The work stat. So.
Thank you, Danielle. So investing in people, you're walking the walk and talking the talk, aren't you, really?
Doing our best.
By setting by example. Yeah.
It's a journey, I think.
That's really interesting.
But yeah.
No, Danielle, it was a great presentation. Thanks for that. I learned lots from that, and I'm sure our delegates have learned lots of interest there as well. Moving on to the Q&A, got a question here for you, Danielle, from Liz Willett, Head of Business Partnership at KHR. Thanks for the question, Liz. Liz says, what did your health and wellbeing champions do? What training was provided and what sort of time commitment was required? So Liz wants to know a lot more about the health and wellbeing champions, which I think they're pivotal, aren't they, to this whole
they have been,
scheme.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we've done a whole variety. We don't specify the time commitment for them, but it's very, very minimal. I'd say none of them spend more than an hour or 2 hours a month on the work. They come along to a kind of brief meeting once every 6 weeks where we kind of plan out what's happening, and then they do what they can do around their day-to-day work. A lot of it is awareness raising, so they might be really active on our Slack channels, sharing articles. They might lead organising some of the Awareness Day events. So we had somebody organised a day around the breast cancer awareness stuff, encourage people to wear pink. They will talk to new starters as part of the induction process. And in terms of training, we gave mental health awareness training to all of our wellbeing champions. So they've all got that background. And we do a lot of kind of informal lunch and learns to get them up to speed. And Time to Change helped us deliver a masterclass around wellbeing as well for our champions in the early days. But we have a couple of them are fully qualified mental health first aiders, but we haven't pursued that route for all of them because that doesn't suit everybody.
Okay. To be a fully qualified mental health first aider, do you have to go on courses or? Yeah. There's a recognised kind of course for that.
There is, There's a 2-day course run by Mental Health First Aid England. I've done the course. It was a really, really interesting 2 days. And again, it's not about making you a counsellor or an expert. but just giving you the tools to have conversations with people who want advice and support with their own mental health, and know when and how to signpost them on to the experts. So.
Okay, thanks for that, Danielle. Question here from Gary Inman, Gary Inman Associates. Thanks for the question, Gary. And Gary's also made a few observations about how about agreeing with what you're saying as well. But the question he asks is, have you considered yet how you might extend this culture to your wider supply chain and contractors? In your case, I imagine that's mostly the network of assessors. So he wants to know about that, whether there's any extension of this culture outside of investors and people.
Yeah, that's definitely something we're looking at now. Now we've got a solid plans and strategy in place with our team. We want to extend that out to our kind of network. We have a network of practitioners who work directly with clients, so we can work with them. And obviously, we encourage all of our supply chains to look at the products we offer, with the Wellbeing product and the people product, and use that in their own organisations.
Right, thanks for that. Another question here from Lynn Lang from North East Scotland College, Learning and Development Advisor. Thanks for the question, Lynn. Lynn says, I've been tasked with implementing a health and wellbeing strategy. I will write a strategy outlining our commitment, but would you recommend also having a policy and separate policies on mental health?
We've got a mix. I think we started off with separate policies on mental health, but what we're doing now is integrating mental health and wellbeing to all of our policies, so that we want mental health and wellbeing to be something that we consider a part of everything we do, rather than having its own independent policy. But I think that's something you might want to move to as you evolve your wellbeing strategy.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah,
thanks. Question here from Constantina Giovanni, account manager at Employ. Thanks for the question, Constantina. What can employees do if there are no resources and space for any break while working? Very specific question there from Constantina. What can employees do if there are no resources and space for any break while working?
I think that's quite hard to answer as a kind of general point. And I think it would be down to the organisation-specific things. But I think it would be about talking to senior management about the impact that's having on the individuals concerned, and kind of looking at the health and safety executive website and seeing if what's not being provided is in breach of health and safety regulations.
It sounds that way, doesn't it? Yeah. It sounds like working for one of those. Anyway, I won't go into that now. Okay, question from Abby Weaver, Retail Marketing Group. Thanks for the question, Abby. We're currently implementing mental health first aiders, around 15 people for the SME. How would you suggest employees actually use the service without feeling awkward or embarrassed? It's an interesting question from Abby. Yeah.
So I think there's a couple of things when you've got mental health first aiders. One, I think, is about having a clear almost charter or set of principles for the mental health first aiders themselves, so they know what their role is and what their role isn't. I think it could be really easy as a mental health first aider to get sucked into things that you shouldn't, and it comes from a good place because you want to help the individual. But so I think having a clear set of principles about what mental health first aiders do and don't do, and then I think there's having a variety of ways for individuals to contact those mental health first aiders. So we have the names of our mental health first aiders up on the wall in the office. We have details on the intranet, and then it's just giving people a different, variety of options for contacting those individuals. So it might be kind of a quick email or a chat over Slack or Microsoft Teams. Arranging face-to-face sessions in lunchtime. I think you just need to give people a variety of ways to do that.
Okay, Danielle. As a sort of to allow for different people's different feelings and emotions. Yeah, that makes sense. Right, another question here for you. This is from this is actually looking a question about your research from Jan Bailey at Brunson Financial Services. Thanks for the question, Jan, or Jan. It may be Jan. Sorry if I pronounced that incorrectly. What kind of businesses were included in your research, and were there any industries where stress was more of an issue than others? Did that come out with research, or?
I haven't got those in front of me, but we talk to a whole variety of organisations, and I think if you go onto our website, there's a breakdown of the research, and it looks at different industries and it looks at different geographies as well. So if you
that information is available then, yeah, from the website, and maybe we can post it. Maybe we can post it up after the webinar as well. Yeah.
Link to that.
Yeah. Thanks for that question, Jan, and hopefully we can get that answered for you properly as well. Got time for a couple more questions. What do you think is the most important aspects of well-being, Danielle?
I think it's really hard to answer that question, but I think the starting point is listening to your people and allowing people to feel they are heard and they've got a voice. I think if you start there, then you won't be going far wrong. So I think, there's not one thing that's more important than the other. As I say, we think all three aspects, all three pillars are really important, but giving people, creating an environment where people feel they can be open about their own well-being and their mental health has got to be the starting point.
Yeah, and that transparency, that openness,
transparent. If you don't have that, then it's really hard to put in place solutions
to get buy-in.
To get buy-in and help people.
Okay, thanks for that. Another question for you here. How do you measure the impact of what you do?
So we use a variety of tools to do that. As part of our We Invest in Wellbeing product, there's a staff survey that goes as part of that. So we deploy that on a regular basis, and that gives us metrics to track how the overall team are feeling along a variety of things. We also track participation in the different events and activities that we put on, and we get informal feedback as well. And we have an HR dashboard that tracks things like sickness absence, and it tracks staff turnover, and we specifically look at how does sickness break down into kind of mental health related issues, and how many of those are related to work or not. So
okay, thanks for that. Time for 2 or 3 more questions. I'm aware of the fact that I've got 2 or 3 minutes to go. Question here from Cara Bramley, Hairdressing Supplies. How much time, at least, should a company be spending on well-being at work? I know it's a very general question, but I can see where Cara's coming from with that one. How much time should a company be spending on well-being at work, or should it be all the time?
Well, yeah. I mean, I think the ultimate is that you make it just part and parcel of what you do and how you approach things, rather than an add-on to what you're doing. So if you take a kind of well-being approach to pretty much everything you do and have that, then it becomes less onerous. I think it's just a part of the way that you deal with things.
Yes.
So I don't think we can specify the number of hours that you should spend on well-being.
No, I understand. Yeah. Well, thanks for the question, Cara. Very interesting question. Time for a couple more before we close. And you mentioned the importance of senior level buy-in. What's the most effective way of achieving this senior level buy-in? Have you got any advice on that, Danielle?
I think it's knowing your senior people and what buttons you need to press. So it might be, as we looked at in the presentation, there's the human cost of kind of not investing in well-being, and that might be the thing that ticks the boxes for your senior leader. But if it's more about the business case, then there's stats there. So I think it's trying to understand the motivations and the things that your senior managers are really interested in, and then framing kind of the discussions we have with them around that and playing to that. Okay,
that's fine. Yeah, and just the slide on your screen now is actually a link to the website, and I know that Danielle, you one of our questions, you said that there'll be more information on the website around the research. So that's there, and I see you've got an invitation to join the mailing list as well, which I'm sure lots of our delegates today will take up that invitation. Based on what you've been talking about today, which is really interesting stuff as well. Yeah.
Yeah, we produce a regular newsletter with articles and things. So.
Absolutely, yeah. Right, another question from Jan. It is Jan Bailey, because Jan has told me it's Jan with a J. So thank you, Jan. In terms of your analysis, what initiatives have you found make the biggest impact in terms of improved mental health?
I'd say it's definitely the preventative initiatives that have the biggest impact. So if you can support people before their mental health deteriorates significantly, then that's where the biggest impact comes from. So that might be about providing, I don't know. I think it would depend organisation to organisation.
Of course, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, thank you, Jan, for that question, and thanks for letting me know how to pronounce your name as well. I'm going to ask you one final question, and this will have to be the last question now, Danielle, and it's a good one to close on, I think. What have been the biggest challenges for you in implementing your wellbeing strategy at Invested in People?
I think partly it's been about how ambitious we want to be. So we've got huge ambitions for what we want to do, and just being realistic about how quickly you can make those things happen. So it's about balancing your ambition with what you can realistically do. So.
Okay, thank you, Danielle, and thanks everyone for your fantastic questions. The great news is that a lot of people have been asking. Actually, a lot of questions coming are about the slides, about the presentation. The great news is that this presentation, this webinar, this live broadcast will be available on demand for 6 months. I think from later on today, so you won't have missed anything. And we've got through quite a few of your questions, but there are still some that we haven't quite managed to answer. But as I said at the top of the show, they will be answered afterwards. Just one thing I wanted to point out for you we've got on the screen now some of our upcoming events, and there's one event that is incredibly pertinent to today's presentation, which actually is next Thursday. It's our Employee Wellbeing Conference next Thursday in central London. I think there are still some registrations open for that event, so it may be something that some of the people on the call today may want to come along to. But just have you enjoyed today, Danielle? Have you enjoyed the presentation?
Yeah, very much so. Yes.
It's been great having you here. Yeah, and say I've learnt lots. Have you got final words you want to say, or are you happy now?
No,
You've got your.
No, I'm happy now. I mean, if people want to connect with me on LinkedIn, then equally happy to do that and share more of what we do.
I'm sure people will. Yeah. Danielle, thanks once again. Thanks to Invested in People for making today's webinar possible. Thanks everyone for attending, and thanks for your great questions. And so the webinar is available on demand for 6 months, and I'm sure that we'll be speaking again, Danielle, in the near future. And have a stress-free rest of the day to everyone.
Thank
you
very much. You too.
Take care now. Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.